in Zoom apps or indirectly by dropping your question in the YouTube or Zoom chat box if you have difficulties with internet transmission. All right, let's start our today's guest lecture with Dr. Ajit Singh. Hello, Dr. Ajit Singh.
Yeah, thank you very much, doctor. Thank you very much.
How are you?
Yes, fine, thanks a lot.
Okay, please, time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much.
Please send your lecture.
Yeah, are you able to see my screen? Rennie? Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, good morning, students, lecturers, and ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my experience with you all. And I hope I'll be able to make some meaningful contribution to your knowledge. Yeah, I think I will start with the research that we are conducting, some brief introduction. I will not go in detail. And I know I'm not using a registered Zoom, so I have only 1 hour to complete my session. Okay, so I have research. These are my research activities, and these are PhD students working on effect of biochar and rock phosphate on the yield and nitrogen fixation. So I mean, this is equipment taking photosynthetic measurements, rate of photosynthesis. What effect will the treatments have on the photosynthesis of this plant? This is a Bambara groundnut plant. It's an underutilized plant. And this is another equipment they use. We call it green seeker. It takes NDVI measurements. That's normalized difference vegetation index. So it's an index of health of the plant. So if the value from this is closer to 1, then the plant is very healthy. If it is very low or if it is in minus, then the plant is very poor. If it is close to 0, if it is minus, that means the plant, there isn't any plant cover on the field. That's almost no plants on the field. So this is an index of health of the plant, very useful parameter. And you can equally know if there is any effect of nutrients that you have applied or not. So very, very important equipment for you to monitor plant growth and development. Now, what we did in this experiment, we studied the effect of biochar. Effect of biochar on the fixation and also rock phosphate. And we all know that the soils in the tropics are deficient in N and P particularly. And what effect will this nutrients? Rock phosphate is actually natural. So it's not inorganic like triple superphosphate or single superphosphate. This is naturally found. So we grind it and it's available in the market, and we apply rock phosphate rather than the inorganic phosphorus. Now, biochar is something produced out of residues. We all know that a lot of residues are being produced from oil palm and other agricultural residues. So we try to burn this at low pressure and high temperature, not very high temperature, but in the absence of oxygen or very little oxygen. And we call that process pyrolysis. So that pyrolysis, the process produces biochar. I think you all know what biochar is. So if we add biochar to the system, to the field, we are actually adding carbon. So this is a very stable product, can stay for hundreds of years. And the main attribute for this particular product is that it provides a very large area for the nutrients to be absorbed. It provides a very large area for the microorganisms to be absorbed on this. So in a way, it increases cation exchange capacity and increases microbial activity. And that's the reason why it did increase the nitrogen fixation in the legumes as well. So that was the objective of the study. I'm not going in detail of this, but what is important here is I will show you the results on N balance of this particular experiment later. There's a Bambara ground. It's being grown in Indonesia as well. It's an underutilized crop. So there is a need for us to carry out research in this particular crop so that we can grow these crops and make use of it in an event of climate change. This is a very hardy crop. Yeah. We have another student that's working on the remote sensing. So they make use of simple drones. These are drones, and they take measurements, and still the measurements are NDVI and some other measurements. So these are very not very complex or expensive drones. Very simple drones they are using, and they are able to predict the yield of crop taking measurements on these plants. So very effective technology, and we have published the paper on this, so you can have a look at this paper, and something that is innovative. And this was the preliminary results or experiment. Now we are working on grape wine in Australia. Actually, this is a Nottingham Adelaide joint PhD award. So we jointly sponsor students, and the student is able to conduct research in Australia and also in Malaysia and UK. And then the research in Australia is on grape wine, while in Malaysia it was on Bambara groundnut. Okay. Then we have another student working on urban farming, that's on vertical farming. And we all know that vertical farming is a trend, especially in metropolitan cities, and that can employ people in the cities, old age people. So it can employ people living in the condominiums, and this can be established on the rooftop or even inside the condominiums. Now, this is once the light facilities are available, LED lights are available, then it can be established even in your room. So, I mean, this is something that is very recent. It's happening in a lot of cities, and this could be one of the ways that we could be more food secure. So this student is working on different effect of different LED light recipes. So we have different proportion of red light, you can see it here. So more red light in this treatment, very little blue, more blue. So these are combination of different recipes, different lights, and this is complete white light. You can see the profile here. All the white light, complete white light is present. So we tested all the lights, and you can see that the performance here is better for 82% red, 18% blue. You can see more better plants, more healthier plants, 82% and 18% combination. You can see this is white light, 48 red, blue, and green. So we tried that, and you can see the effect quite significantly. So this is something that we can probably use to increase our food production. But unfortunately, the number of crops that can grow in vertical farming are quite limited. Particularly, we can grow herbs, very expensive herbs, or high value crops like vegetables, leafy vegetables can be grown. Tomatoes can be grown as well, and some other fruit vegetables. Now, another research is on the biological nitrogen fixation on oil palm. Now, we have discovered a bacteria in UK campus. It was by Professor Hawkins. So it's a GD bacteria, that is Gluconoacetobacter dizotrophicus. So it's a bacteria that is found in sugarcane. So, but there is a particular strain of that bacteria that is able to fix nitrogen in cereals, that is in non-legumes. So it has been tried in rapeseed and mustard, wheat, and we are able to save up to 50% nitrogen. So we tried it in oil palm. It has been very tough trying on the oil palm. We got positive results in the lab, but on the field, we're not able to get positive results. So we're still trying to modify it and see how we can inoculate this bacteria in the oil palm so that we'll be successful in reducing the N fertilizer requirement in oil palm. Then we also worked on controlled release fertilizer. Now, controlled release fertilizer, these are fertilizers which are quite a bit expensive, but they release nutrients very slowly. They are coated. So, and it's a sustainable method of applying fertilizer, and losses are very minimal or very little. So we did this experiment on oil palm. So it's a lysimeter experiment. So we're able to collect the water that is leached out of this system, and we did the analysis. So quite useful, very successful experiment. It was sponsored by a company that produced the fertilizer. Okay. So that's the research in brief. That's what we are doing, and certainly we have we are in the process of having MOU. So we'll continue doing some research in collaboration with Brawijaya University as well. Now to the main topic. Now we are going to go through this topic on nitrogen and phosphorus balance. And we all know that NNP is very important for us, and as well as plants. Now we rely on plants, no doubt about that. So we need NNP too, and we get it from the plants. So that's why we're all related. So plants have to produce enough of NNP, that is proteins and other compounds that have P, and we rely on those proteins for all growth and development. So that's why it's very important for us to have a balance, have a good management system, so that we'll be able to manage well and get a lot of these nutrients from the plants and for us, and as well as for the plant use. Now some basics here, and we have nutrients. We need at least, the plants need at least 14 of these mineral nutrients for their growth. These are list, and this is where the phosphorus and nitrogen lies here. So these are the group of micronutrients that are required in more than 1 gram per kg of dry matter. Then we have the micronutrients that are required in less than 100 milligram. So this is a list which you're very much familiar with, and this is where NNP falls. And so NNP are macronutrients which are required in large quantities. In fact, when you divide this, then NP and K are the macronutrients which are required in more quantity than calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. They also form the basis of our fertilizer industry. That's the NPK. Okay. Then this is N, nitrogen. When we come to nitrogen, this is the nitrogen cycle here. And nitrogen is actually one of the most yield-limiting nutrient in our agro ecosystem. So all crops require nitrogen, except N-fixing legumes, which are able to synthesize. They are able to manufacture themselves using the rhizobium bacteria. But other cereals and other crops that are not able to fix, they depend solely on the organic matter and the fertilizer that we supply, or the nutrients or the residues that are being recycled naturally. So the nitrogen that is part of the amino acids, and these amino acids are the building blocks of protein, enzymes, and hormones. So they're very important. And these amino acids are about 200 in number, and at least 21 are required for the protein synthesis. And the most abundant compound on this planet is the Rubisco. Now, why Rubisco? Rubisco is very important for carbon fixation. Now, Rubisco is an enzyme, and it fixes carbon. Remember, carbon sequestration is responsible for carbon sequestration. So it fixes carbon in photosynthesis, and that eventually the carbon is recycled as a residue into the soil as organic matter. So this compound, which is known as the most abundant compound on this planet, so it's actually made from nitrogen. It has nitrogen in its component, and phosphorus as well, Rubisco. So ribulose biphosphate carboxylase. So it has phosphorus as well as nitrogen, because it's a protein, it's an enzyme. Okay. Then we have almost 80% of the leaf organic N that is being produced is allocated to Rubisco and other enzymes that are responsible for photosynthesis. Okay, the nitrogen actually does not, plants do not accumulate inorganic nitrogen. It's always assimilated. That is, it has to be converted. The nitrate and the ammonia that is taken off by plants has to be assimilated. It has to be converted into proteins and amino acids. So it doesn't actually store nitrate or ammonia. It doesn't. There are some plants that do, like lettuce does store it, and a high quantity of nitrate can lead to toxicity in animals. You know, when we take this lettuce, these plants, then it can lead us to toxic. It can lead us to death as well in some animals, especially animals when they take a lot of these plants that has a lot of nitrate, then that can also lead to death as well. Okay. Then this is a very simplified diagram of the cycle, nitrogen cycle. So nitrogen is mostly added as a fertilizer, that's the input into the system, and as biological nitrogen fixation that is done by legumes. Then through organic manures, we add organic manures into the soil, and then we have the atmospheric nitrogen fixation. Okay, and then when it's added into the soil, then the organic end has to be mineralized. When we add manure, the manure is not immediately available to the plants. No, it has to be decomposed. So during decomposition, there is a mineralization process that releases ammonia and nitrate. Then ammonia is further converted into nitrate by bacteria. We have bacteria, Nitrobacter, Nitrosomonas. So these bacteria convert ammonia into nitrate, and nitrate is taken up by plants. Ammonia is also taken up by these plants. The ammonia is also fixed. Ammonia is taken up by microorganisms. These microorganisms in a way is fixed, which is later available again to the plants for their use. Okay. Then there's another reaction happening, very, very important reaction, that is denitrification. So we have bacteria, denitrifying bacteria that convert nitrate into dinitrogen oxide or nitrous oxide and nitrogen, which is released into the atmosphere. This nitrous oxide it's a greenhouse gas, and it can be very, it's almost 300 times more. It causes global warming 300 times more than CO2. So this is something that is worrying. And this happens particularly, this process happens when there is probably too much waterlogging, and when there is a lot of organic matter into the soil, and waterlogging is an anaerobic process, that releases these two gases that are a concern in terms of global warming. Then there is volatilization as well. Volatilization from the fertilizer. When you apply fertilizer, then it is being volatilized due to sunlight and from the surface. Then there is surface runoff as well. Okay, there is some volatilization from the leaf, very little directly. So whatever is the ammonia is being lost from the plants. So this is a very simple process. Remember that nitrogen is always present in the plant as an assimilate, not as an inorganic nutrient. Now, phosphorus, similar to nitrogen, is the next important nutrient that plants require, and they also are present in an assimilate form. They must be converted. It's normally available in H2PO4 and HPO4, but this must be converted into assimilate form, that is into an organic form. Plants do not store these anions. They are converted into phospholipids, ATP, nucleic acid. So that's more stable, not in this particular form. Some little concentration do exist in the vacuoles, but normally almost all of it is assimilated, just like nitrogen. Now this is nitrogen and P deficiency is quite common in the tropics, and P deficiency is quite common in the acidic soils. The soils in the tropics are quite acidic, and as low as 3.5 to 4, strongly acidic to moderately acidic soils. And this is a serious problem. P deficiency is a serious problem in our acidic soil, because the P that is available in the soil is fixed, is immobilized. So it's not available for the growth and development of the plants. So P is very important because it's part of the Robisco, the most important compound, most abundant compound. It's part of phospholipid. It's part of ATP. You know what ATP is? That's where the energy is stored. ATP, ADP, if you can remember. So adenosine triphosphate, adenosine diphosphate. So ATP stores energy, and when it releases energy for the growth and development of the plants, it turns into ADP. So P is there in these particular compounds and part of nucleic acid. So very important. And these are, proteins. This is what we consume as well. So we rely on plants for these proteins. So we must ensure that these plants have adequate amount of N and P so that we'll have a healthy life by consuming these plants. Now, this is a simple cycle, just like the nitrogen cycle. So the P is added, as a fertilizer, as an organic manure, or as a residue. Now we have the organic P, which is mineralized. It has to be decomposed. Then we have inorganic P through fertilizers. And then we have rock phosphate as well. And these are converted into H2PO4 and HPO4. So P is normally available to plants in this particular forms. Okay. Now this H2PO4 is normally available when the soil is acidic, a bit acidic condition, and this is under basic condition. But when it is more acidic, it's fixed. That is, it becomes immobilized. It's fixed to the clay particles, or it can be taken up by microorganisms for their own growth and development. Just immobilization. It's not available to the plants for their uptake. Then part of it is leached very little, not like nitrogen. Nitrogen leaches very quickly and very fast, but P is fixed. So it's not it's fixed to the soil. Especially it forms iron and aluminum complex. So it's a kind of, it precipitates insoluble. So this is soluble, and when it reacts with aluminum, which is quite abundant in acidic soil, then it's fixed as aluminum or iron complex. Okay. Then P loss from the erosion happens as well, very little. Erosion and leaching, that's quite little, but more in erosion than runoff and erosion than through leaching, because once it's inside the soil, it forms complex. All right, that was the basic, and now we come to the nutrient uptake, the main topic that we are discussing. Now we all know that N and P are very, very important for us, and we need to apply these nutrients in the soil to make up for what has been lost. We harvest grains, we harvest fruits and vegetables. So when we take away a lot of nutrients, then it must be replaced. So that's why there must be that balance, and we must make sure that there isn't too much of N and P into the soil, or else is being lost into the system, and that can have environmental effect on the system. Okay, so it's very important that from the sustainability point of view, we must ensure that whatever nutrients are being applied into the soil or into the system, and whatever is being harvested are in balance. Okay, so we must make sure that we do that for our sustainable system. Now, these nutrients are very important for their growth and development, and we must remember that we do not need to apply these nutrients in very high quantity. There is a response curve. So when we apply these nutrients, there is a particular time when we get optimum. So this is our target. This is our focus. This is where we should probably stop adding any fertilizer once we reach optimum. And we all know that for each and every crop, we know where the optimum lies. So as a scientist, as a researcher, as an educated person, we should be able to monitor our application of fertilizer. Unlike farmers, they may not have that information unless we have very effective and efficient extension services. If we have good access to these materials online through smartphones, then the farmers will be able to farmers can be more educated, and they will be able to add the required quantity of fertilizer. Or else, in most cases, research has shown that farmers apply more than what is being required by these plants. So that's the reason why a lot of it being lost to the system. Okay. So this is a response curve, a typical response curve. So there is an increase in the growth or yield of the crop as you increase the nutrient level. And at a particular point, it reaches its optimum. And anything more than that, then that's a waste of resources. And if you go further, if you add too much, it becomes toxic to the plants. The plants may eventually show toxic symptoms and die if there is too much of these fertilizers. Now, there is a hidden hunger symptom. Now, hidden hunger is something that is, the plants do not show any symptoms. At this particular point, the plants do show symptoms. You will see symptoms for toxic level as well. But at this particular point, this particular critical area where there is this curve is the hidden hunger area. Now, hidden hunger is a situation where plants do not show symptoms, but they are suffering. They are stressed, but they do not show symptoms. This particular point. We do have hidden hunger in humans as well. So we have children that are deficient in vitamins and minerals, but they do not show symptoms. So that's a very critical area. So we must ensure that children get adequate, balanced diet all the time so that they do not suffer from hidden hunger. Similarly, the plants must get fertilizer at the right time, in the right quantity, so that this particular hidden hunger symptoms will not occur, because this is very, very critical. The plants don't show that symptoms. Okay. All right. So this is for us to have a sustainable production system. We must make sure that we apply the right amount of fertilizer, right amount of nutrients at the right time. That's part of the management. Now, losses, as I told you earlier, there are losses from the system as runoff, and crops do take up as volatilization for nitrogen. A lot of it is being lost. So losses can be as much as 50%. And the plant is able to recover sometimes up to 30%. So you can imagine the losses that are happening. So these losses are more in nitrogen, because nitrogen is highly mobile. So P is fixed, at least P is fixed in the soil, but N is highly mobile. So we have N losses as high as 50% in some soils. So it all depends on the soil, but it can be up to 50%. Losses in the case of P can be up to 30 to 40%, which is mostly through runoff, very little through leaching. Okay. So I told you earlier that the losses through N2O gas, which is quite common under inorganic conditions when there is too much water logging and in organic soil, and this can be quite disastrous in terms of global warming. It's even more dangerous, 300 times more dangerous than CO2. Okay. So there is a need for us to manage this so that these losses are minimized. So you can see these losses are minimized as much as possible for global warming. I told you in the last lecture, this is global warming, and you can see the effect of global warming, the climate change that's happening. Currently, you see floods in places where there wasn't any rainfall, there wasn't any flood before. We have droughts happening in other parts of the world. So this is something serious that we need to take that into consideration as a scientist and as a student working in this particular area. Now, how do we manage this? So effective management is very important. And we know that we rely a lot of it on commercial fertilizers. And as a developing nation, we need to add those fertilizers. There's no doubt about that. And to increase our yield, we need to add it. But we need to add it in a sustainable manner. We need to add it when it is required. We need to add it so that we don't lose much. So we need to add it in such a way that we add the right amount and at the right time, right place, and at the right rate. So before we apply any fertilizer, we need to know the rate of the fertilizer that we need to apply for that particular crop. If it is rice, what's the rate? If it is oil palm, what is the rate that we need to apply? Very, very important. Then the right time. Every crop has its critical growth stage. So if a crop is growing like rice, tillering is very critical. So you need to apply fertilizer at tillering. If there is any nutrient deficiency at tillering, then the yield will be significantly affected. That's the right time. Flowering is the right time. Grain filling is the right time. Okay. Right place, yes. You need to apply close to the root if it is a tree, and certainly it shouldn't be far away from the plant, and should be mixed with the soil. Though it's going to require labor, it should be mixed with the soil so that there isn't much volatilization. So the sunlight is not in direct contact. And right amount, certainly. Once you do know the rate, you are able to calculate the right amount. Do not apply extra, which many farmers do, just for the purpose of increasing the yield of the crop. Okay. Then, as I told you earlier in the earlier lecture, the cover crops, very efficient, and in combination with minimum tillage or no tillage practices can be very effective in controlling the leaching and runoff, and also in maintaining the soil temperature, the organic matter, and recycling of nutrients, because some of these cover crops are quite rich in nitrogen. All right, nitrogen phosphorus balance, how is it computed? Based on the cycle, you saw that there is an input, there is an output. Look at it here, beautifully described by Lim et al. So there is an input through fertilizer, manure, through livestock or residues. There is nitrogen fixation happening. There is some atmospheric deposition. Sometimes, when there is thunder, storm, rain, so nitrous oxide will dissolve in rainwater and will now be added as ammonia or nitrate into the soil. So it happens quite little, but it does happen that way as well. The seeds also contain nitrogen, of course. If it is a legume, very high in protein content, very high in nitrogen. So these are sources of inputs, and the outputs are harvest, crop residues, and losses as well. Normally when we compute our N balance or P balance, normally losses, we don't take that into consideration because we can't compute that all the time. But under a normal and ideal situation, we should be able to do that. And we can equally do that from different sources. We have references. So we don't need to do that all the time. But the main calculation is N input or P input through fertilizer and manures or N fixation, and output through harvested nitrogen or phosphorus, that through the harvest. So we harvest fruits and vegetables, the economic portion of the plant. So how much did we remove? And the residues. So what do we do with the residues? The residues are also harvested. So ideally, do we return it? If you return it, then you're adding nutrient to the soil. If you don't return it, if you burn it, then you're causing global warming and you are wasting your resources. The nutrients are being wasted. So these are some of the things that should be taken into consideration. Okay. So I'll make use of these case studies to understand better. And I will take you back to my student that's working in Indonesia. And he estimated the nitrogen stock in the soil of the old oil palm. And he did the replanting later to at least trap those nutrients that are being released through the decomposition of the oil palm residues. So the oil palm residues, oil palm was felled, the residues were cut into pieces and applied on the surface, and those residues decomposed, and then second oil palm was replanted. In between the two oil palm rows, its space was left ideal. So we made use of the crops to grow. It's a kind of interplanting. So in planting in between the rows of oil palm to trap the nutrients that are being released. So that's something we are trying to do. We are trying to trap the nutrient that is being released from the oil palm residues. Okay. All right. So the amount of residues that fell, that contributed to this here. The residues that you see on the field here is about 83 tons per hectare of dry matter. So a lot of carbon being recycled into the soil. And when this is added, it contributes 535 kg nitrogen. Remember, this is just per hectare. Per hectare calculation is on per hectare basis, 535 kg in 1 hectare. Okay, so this is when it's being released. Then we should have plants. We should have plants to take up these nutrients, or else this will be leached off. So we replant oil palm. We plant annual crops in between to trap this nitrogen that is being released through decomposition, or else it's lost to the system. Similarly, P, the amount of P that is accumulated in these residues that you see here is 63.5 kg per hectare. So imagine if it is 10 hectare, 10 times 63.5, quite huge. So in terms of fertilizer equivalence, this is around 138 kg of triple superphosphate. Okay. In terms of nitrogen, this is about 1,163 kg of urea. So imagine if we don't return this, we lose this. Okay. So it's it's more sensible to return these residues and allow them to decompose. And they don't only add nutrients, but they also mitigate climate change. They improve the structure of the soil. They improve the soil health generally. So this will be a sustainable system if we do that. So I've tried to summarize everything here in a diagram. And you can see here the amount of fertilizer that is being added is around 145 kg per hectare. And the P is around 35 this is on average. And this is just for calculation purpose. And then this is the input in blue. The output, what is being lost, is in red arrows here. Okay. So we harvest fruits, which is around 60 kg of nitrogen on the basis of average yield of 20 tons per hectare per year. So we lose 20 kg of nitrogen in the fruit and 8 kg of phosphorus. The N and P content in the fruits is not that high. Okay, it's not that high, quite low. So 60 kg is lost to the fruit and 8 kg of P is lost to the fruit. And then the runoff is around 6.5% nitrogen, 1.2% phosphorus. So we lose 9.43 kg N and 0.42 kg phosphorus. Now this is very serious. This is very critical because this N and P that reaches into our water stream or reservoir causes eutrophication. Now, eutrophication is actually a process where the algae, the flora here get a lot of these nutrients and they grow on this and block the, probably they have a lot of biomass that prevents sunlight reaching the bottom of the stream or the reservoir. So that causes death of some of these organisms, the fish and other organisms. So it can be quite serious, okay? So a lot of it is being lost into this system. So we must avoid this so that we'll have a very sustainable system without affecting. So this should be minimized. Then 3% is lost through leaching, which is around 4.35 kg, which is 3% of this nitrogen, 145, okay? So this is how it's computed, 3% of this. So I got these figures through several literature reviews, these figures also through literature review. Okay. Then around 3 kg is fixed here, 3 kg is fixed. I told you earlier, fixed, especially if it is acidic soil, we have a lot of ammonium. So it forms ammonium phosphate, P is fixed in an acidic soil, and this is a serious problem. So that's the reason why we need to add lime when we are growing, especially annual crops, and also in oil palm, we need to add lime at least 1 to 2 tons per hectare to at least maintain that pH so that P will be available into the soil. So leaching is around 4.35. Okay, so at least 15%. This is something quite serious, volatilization. So at least 15% is lost into the system. It can be higher depending on how much fertilizer you have added. Normally we split fertilizer. Why? Because if you add too much fertilizer, then certainly you lose everything. So it's good to split so that very little will be lost. And a split is also applied because plants need fertilizer at different time. So if it is, let's say, rice at vegetative stage, you apply some fertilizer and apply fertilizer again at flowering, tillering, flowering, or grain filling. So different stages can be applied at different stages. It's a bit expensive because you need to apply 3 times. That's where the slow release fertilizers become very important. You just apply once and it's released very slowly. So we have the red one, that's the nutrients that are lost into the system. The blue one, that's the input. So based on that, if you do this calculation here, so the output, fruit, runoff, leaching, and volatilization. So if you take leaching, volatilization, and runoff into consideration, which is total of 88.28 kg nitrogen. You added 145, so lost is 88, including fruit. The balance is 56.72. So there is surplus of nitrogen in the soil. There is surplus, okay? So will this be used up by plant in the following year? what are the chances? Because if there is surplus, then likely anything that is surplus in the system will be lost through leaching or runoff. The chances are more that it will be lost through runoff and leaching. So we should take care that we add the right amount of fertilizer. And normally, for the sake of easiness, very easy to handle, you see the farmer will apply the fertilizer on the surface of the soil. And the farmer might do that, but the companies, the large plantations, just apply on the surface. Okay, when you apply on the surface, then there is direct contact of fertilizer with sunlight, direct contact with water. So more runoff, more volatilization. And of course, a lot of farmers and also the plantations are practicing the mulching, that is mukuna. That's a good method to at least prevent that. We'll come see that in the next slide. So then that means there is a surplus, that is more is being applied than the plant need. Okay. Then if you see the P, same thing with the P here, the input 35, output 11.42, including fixation. There's no volatilization in the case of P. It's not lost through volatilization. Leaching very minimal, runoff very little. So the total here lost is 11.42 and the surplus 23.58. So there is surplus here. But in this case, the surplus might be fixed in the case of P. But in the case of N, there is a concern because N will not stay in soil. It will be easily leached off. Based on the rainfall that we have, very high rainfall, very high light intensity. So the likely that this surplus will be lost, and you can imagine the amount of energy that is being used for the manufacture of N fertilizer. N fertilizer is very expensive to produce and quite expensive in the market as well. So producing N fertilizer is actually not sustainable, but that's certainly we have to rely on them because we have to increase the demand for the growing population. But we must make sure that it is applied in a sustainable manner and not much is being lost. And one way is through coatings. So coating is a sustainable fertilizer method, application method. Okay. Now, if you take this into consideration, the 25 years growing oil palm for 25 years and then felling it, because that's the maximum lifespan for you to have productive yield, then you will see that a total of, total amount of 25 years total, 535 N was added and P was 63.5. This much was removed from the fruit. So this is times 25 years. And then this is through fertilizer. So this is multiplied by 25. And so we did that calculation. And we found out that there is still surplus of nitrogen in the soil. Okay. So this is when the residue was added. But if you remove the residues, this is N in residues. If it is being removed, there is still surplus of nitrogen here, right here. Okay. So similarly for phosphorus, there is surplus of P in the soil that is still there. Okay. So this is just a simple calculation that you can do about the balance. And this shows that there is surplus of nitrogen that we need to tap or we need to manage for a sustainable production system. Okay. Or else it will be lost and may not be available to the plants. So based on our previous discussions, we can see that cover crop, very useful method of conserving loss of nutrients through volatilization and through runoff. And some of these are legumes, but all cover crops are legumes. They're able to fix nitrogen as much as 150. Okay, Mukuna can fix up to 242 kg of nitrogen per hectare, which is equivalent to 150 kg nitrogen. That's quite substantial. So Mukuna can really add too much of nitrogen into the soil. This is on the uptake in the higher side. It can be lower depending on whether it's Mucuna pruriens or Mucuna bracteata, or depending on the bacteria, rhizobim bacteria, is it available in the soil? What is the concentration of the bacteria, the soil type? So a lot of factors do determine this. And then the amount of biomass it adds is up to 8 to 10. It can be higher depending on the management practice. So huge amount of organic matter is being added. So when you incorporate into the soil, the N content is 2 to 4%. That's very low CN ratio. It can decompose within 3 to 4 months because of the N content of the mucuna green residues. Okay, so very useful. This is something that is being practiced in lots of plantations, and other farmers need to practice this as well. And this is just the nutrient side of it. It does maintain a temperature. It does maintain a very sustainable environment in the soil, temperature, microorganisms, and a lot of other things. Now, this is the fertilizer I was referring to. This is coated fertilizers. They are a bit expensive. I think an ordinary farmer cannot afford this. They're expensive, but no doubt about that, these fertilizer is the future, and they are highly sustainable. The leaching losses are very minimal. The runoff is very minimal as well. And the nitrogen use efficiency in this case, because they are released slowly. So you don't need to split apply 3 or 4 times. You just need to add 1 time, and it's able to supply nutrient up to 6 months, depending on the fertilizer brand. Okay, so for 6 months, there is slow release of nutrients, just like the organic matter. Okay. Then the other practices, if you can mix this with oil palm, if not, farmers do that. Farmers do mix, plantations still practice monoculture. You have trees like Leucaena or Sesbania. These are legumes that fix as much as 274 kg nitrogen. So if they are fixing nitrogen into the soil, they are adding nitrogen. And at the same time, the stem cutting, the tender cuttings, if you cut them and add it into the soil, is a green manure. The N content is 2 to 4%. So within 1 crop cycle of maize, which is 3 months or 2 to 3 months, you're able to get nutrients from the Leucaena residue, green residue. So that can be practiced sustainably. We are practicing intercropping. So we have soybean that is deep rooted. We have maize that is shallow rooted. So there is recycling of nutrients from the subsoil to the topsoil. So a lot of things happening, and this, I believe, and you all agree with me, that this could be the sustainable system in future. And it is happening, no doubt about that. People are practicing it. Lots of farmers are practicing. Some have been practicing for years. It is there, and we need to at least make the system more common. Let people use it. Okay. Sorry. Well, it's not up to 1 hour. It has started again.
Maybe we can
share it, is it?
Share it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the problem with this. Ours, we use Teams, and
Yeah.
it's not the paid one. Yeah, please. Thank you very much.
Maybe I can share. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, next slide, please. Sorry about that. Yeah. Can I have the next slide? Yes. So that's one case study. Another one is something that I worked while in Nigeria. And this is soil unbalance as affected by soybean maturity class. This is a rotation system. So we have rotation here. We have soybean. You see soybean on the screen here, and maize. So we grow this for 1 year. And in the following year, we plant maize in all the plots here. So it's a maize rotation, soybean maize rotation. Okay. So we have different varieties of soybean. We have soybean that is long duration, soybean that is short duration. Okay. So we try to see the unbalance in this particular system. Okay. So now the soybean is quite common in a rotation system. Why? Because it's a legume. It's able to fix nitrogen, and it's able to make use of the nitrogen that it has fixed to the subsequent crop of maize. So in a rotation system, you all know the importance of rotation. Okay, very, very important in our production system. And we are going back to that rotation system. And that's the most effective system that we can have currently. Yes, next slide, please. So this is research work that was conducted long ago. So I'm using it just for demonstration purpose here. So we grew different varieties of soybean here. Some are early varieties, some are late varieties, and early, late. Now the early varieties are improved varieties. These are improved varieties and very efficient, very high harvest index. High harvest index, remember, high harvest index means that it's able to translocate more of the carbon from the plant to the grain, or more of nitrogen from the whole plant to the grain. So that's what N harvest index means. So harvest index means that greater proportion of the dry matter is moved or translocated to the grain. So that is high harvest index. And most of the modern varieties of rice, wheat, and other crops that we have, their harvest index is quite high. They are able to move a lot of carbon to the grain. So that's, you can see the early and late medium varieties here. This is grain yield. I'm not going to discuss the grain yield, but I'm discussing the N balance, the N content here. Now this is a legume. It's able to fix nitrogen. Look at the amount of nitrogen that is fixed here. So fixed nitrogen up to 67 to 82 kg nitrogen. And if you look at the other ones here, 43, 57, 45, quite high. So quite high nitrogen fixes up to 70 to 80%. And we have litter as well. And the amount of nitrogen that is being removed, look at the amount here, 77, 82 kg. Now soybean is a very efficient crop. Soybean is able to harvest, it has a very high protein content. I think you all know that, more than 40%. So it's able to harvest 84% of its nitrogen, the total nitrogen in the plant. 84% of the total nitrogen is moved to the grain. That's what nitrogen harvest index means. Just like harvest index, where the yield, the photosynthate, most of it is moved to the grain. Similarly, nitrogen harvest index is the proportion of nitrogen that is moved to the grain out of the total nitrogen that is available in the plant. So assuming the total nitrogen in the plant is 100 kg. So then the plant is able to move 84 kg to the grain. That's very, very efficient system. So 84% to the grain. So NHI, nitrogen harvest index, is 84%, 77%, 81, 83, 84. Now look at this 80s are mostly for the early duration varieties. Now early duration varieties, they are small, look at it, they are smaller in size and they have more grains, more pods, while the long duration varieties have more biomass. So they add more biomass, okay? They stay longer on the field, while these ones are short, more improved varieties. So the early duration varieties are more efficient in moving nitrogen to the grain. So as a result, look at the N balance here. Now N balance, if you return the residues to the soil, minus for the early varieties, which are more improved varieties. But for the late maturing varieties, which stay longer on the field and more biomass, because they have more biomass, so it adds more to the residue. So the N balance is positive. So growing late varieties is economical, okay? At least it's not that great. Remember, it's not 3.8 kg per hectare. It's not that great, but at least it's better than the early varieties, which is negative, okay? Now, N balance, if you remove the store, if you do not return the store to the field, then there is negative N balance, minus 18, minus 13. So if you are burning the residues or using it for another purpose, remove it from the field, then the N balance is in negative. Now, negative here means that the plant has removed nutrient from the soil, more nutrient from the soil. Okay, so it has become, the soil is now negative. So it's lower in N content as compared to before when there was no soybean. That's what it means. So any crop that grows on this, any subsequent crop will not get much nutrients. So you have to apply fertilizer. That's the implication. Okay, so this is legume. We all feel that, yes, we are growing legume and it's going to improve the soil and is going to add nitrogen. So based on this calculation, you can see that it is negative, N balance is negative. Same here. So N balance negative up to 15 kg per hectare, quite high. Okay. Yes. Next slide, please. Okay. So I have summarized my results into this diagram here. Now this is a system that is the ones in red are the ones that are being removed. This is 74-84% of nitrogen is being removed in the grain of soybean, and at least 8 to 17 kg in the litter, which is returned to the soil. If it is returned to the soil, yes, certainly, it's good. If it is not, then we lose this as well. The litter that falls while the plant is growing is just 2 to 8 kg, quite minimal. And that is, of course, is recycled into the soil. Then the roots that remain in the soil, if you harvest your soybean from here, then 2 to 5 kg of nitrogen is being added into the soil. Okay. Then fixation is up to 75%. And fixation in soybean is up to 75%, depending on the varieties, depending on the rhizobium bacteria in the soil. If the concentration of bacteria is low, then certainly this might be low as well. Then we have, yes, certainly this is, okay, the negative that I was referring to. So there is a negative balance, -7 to -18. So this N has been taken up from the soil. So in fact, soybean, growing soybean removed N from the soil. So it made the soil less fertile in terms of nitrogen. Okay. So in that case, the soybean varieties, if we can summarize this, the soybean varieties that were grown were highly efficient in nitrogen harvesting. And that's the reason why they are very high in protein content, because soybean plant is a very efficient plant. Now with this imbalance, then we can say that, yes, the growing soybean into a rotation system is not going to be highly profitable. Okay, then certainly we must supplement with N fertilizer to make sure that the subsequent crop that is being grown on this crop, this plant, this field of soybean will be healthy or will have enough nutrients. So it's very important for us, if you are into rotation system or intercropping system, we must select the appropriate soybean variety. So in this way, you can say that the long duration varieties, in terms of sustaining the system, sustaining the soil with nutrients, will be preferred as compared to the short duration varieties, because they are very, very efficient. Short duration varieties are very efficient and they remove N from the soil. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, now this is the yield of the subsequent crop in rotation. Okay, the same field that you saw in the earlier slide was planted with maize to see what effect will it have on the subsequent crop. Okay, so we incorporated the soybean residue, we used it as a mulch, and we exported it, and in the maize was exported as well. We didn't return back the residues, and we also had a fallow system as well. So you can see that the yield here in maize, this is maize and maize again, the yield was 685 kg per hectare. So there was more yield. Remember, there was no fertilizer applied in this experiment, no fertilizer at all, okay? Then there was fertilizer to compute the fertilizer equivalence value. We do have fertilizer for maize, just for calculation purpose, okay? Then we have the soybean maize, yes, better than maize, you can see here. We have soybean maize with mulch, better. Soybean where the residue was exported, there was no residue, was a bit less. And soybean with mulch, it's a bit better. But the best was one that where the soybean was incorporated into the soil. So there was a difference. Mulch did not yield as much as the one where soybean residue was incorporated. Okay, but you must be wondering why, you know, when there was the soybean plant removed and from the soil, then why this benefit as compared to the one where there was no soybean? You see, there is some difference. Well, it's not only the residues improve the structure of the soil. So there are other benefits that could be the reason why we have higher yield here. Okay, that could be the reason. So there are other benefits involved, but the benefit is not that great. You can see it here.
using the fertilizer equivalence value. So this benefit that we have because of the incorporation of the residue is just 20 kg nitrogen per hectare. And because of the mulch here is 10 kg. And because of the export, if you don't return the mulch, the benefit is still 8. There is a benefit, very little, 8 kg nitrogen per hectare. So there is benefit, and there are other factors involved in it. When you add mulch into the soil, certainly you add you improve the structure of the soil. A lot of microbial activity happening. So this is the N balance calculation. I will say does not reflect 100% what's happening in the system, but certainly it gives you an idea that yes, there is something happening, and this can help you in the management of your production system. So it's very important for the management of the system. Yes, next slide, please. Okay, now this is another experiment that we did here in Malaysia. Now this is a crop that is becoming, I'll not say popular, but I will say is an underutilized crop grown originated in Africa. But we need to grow this because it's a very hardy crop. This crop can grow in drought condition. And I know many of you know that it's grown in Indonesia and in Thailand, not that popular in Malaysia. And I don't know what they call it in Indonesian language, but it's being grown and around 19 to 20% protein. And one unique attribute of this crop is that it can survive stress condition. Okay, it can grow even in Africa. It grows with 300 to 500 millimeter of rainfall, very little rainfall. It can still give you quite substantial yield of 500 kg per hectare, 800 kg per hectare, even under drought condition. Okay, we got up to 2.5 tons per hectare in Malaysian condition. Okay, but it can tolerate drought. That's the most important thing. And with the climate change that's happening now, I think it's very important for us to do research work on this and be able to grow this crop and keep them in our system, so that in an event of any failure of the crops that we rely on, rice, wheat, and maize, at least we can grow these crops to feed ourselves. Okay, so that's why this crop becomes quite important, and we are doing research work on that. So it takes at least 3 months to mature, and this is sowing somewhere in late October, harvesting in February. So at least 3 to 4 months for the soil to grow. The best way to grow this is on mounds, because we have very high rainfall. So you raise, from my experience, do not grow on flat. If you raise it a bit, then the water can easily can flow through, and the plants will not have too much moisture, or else too much moisture can lead to disease like phytophthora or other fungal diseases. Okay, but this crop did well. Generally, it did well in Malaysia here with high rainfall condition. So that's why it becomes quite important. So this is a paper that you can have you can refer to in case if you are very much interested. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so we did N balance here as well. So you can see that the N harvest index 56, 38, 35. Now this is a crop that not much research work has been done. In fact, there aren't any varieties currently that has been released. So they are all accessions, land races that we are growing currently. It's because it's underutilized. Why? Because not much work has been done on this. So that's the reason why there aren't any improved varieties. And that's the reason why the N harvest index is quite low. Okay, but it's good anyway. Based on our management system, if you can remember, we do not want a crop that has too much very high harvest index, or else it will deplete our soil of nutrients. But this is fine. We are able to sustain the system. We are able to return the residues into the system because it will have more N in the residues, and which is quite clear. If you see the N content in the grain in the home here, the stem, the store is quite high compared to soybean. Soybean was just 0.2, 0.8, 1.2, 1.5, while in the case of Bambara, the N content is 2.3, which is 17.5. So this is likely to decompose faster within a season of 2 to 3 months. So a subsequent crop grown on this in the field of soybean will make the N available to the plant. Okay, but again, come to the N balance. Yes, so if you return back the residues, there is positive N balance here. Particularly this crop, which has a very, had quite 25.6 kg of nitrogen per hectare. Okay, it has quite high as N balance. So, but if you remove the residues, then all the varieties that we tested have negative N balance. Okay, therefore, for the system to be sustainable, we must return the residues into the soil. By removing residues, we are depriving the soil of their nutrients. We are decreasing the nutrient content of the soil. Yes, next slide, please. All right, so I think that's the last slide I have. I think I'm able to complete it within the stipulated given time. So in conclusion, we can say that this is a formula that we have used in computing the N balance. We must know the amount of nutrients that are going into the system and the amount of nutrient that is going out of the system. So we should be able to compute that in a crude manner. I don't need to take the loss through leaching and into the consideration, but just get an approximate picture so that you will be able to manage your nutrients in and nutrients out. So if you have removed too much of these nutrients, please make sure that you add organic matter into the soil rather than adding too much of inorganic fertilizer that can cause environmental issues. So this is what different ways that it can be modified, but the general formula will be input minus the output. Okay, we can modify that based on the legume or cereal or fixation. So this is what we used, and this is quite an effective system and quite commonly used in other areas as well. So the effective management of these nutrients are very, very important and very important for sustainable production system. But remember that when we talk of sustainability, it's not just the sustainability of the environment, taking care of the environment, taking care of the soil, but taking care of us as well as a human being. We must get profit, we must get income to sustain our family. You have a family that relies on agriculture, and if you do not get enough yield, then that's not sustainable. So we should take the human welfare into consideration as well. Then only we can talk of sustainability. Okay, so take the human welfare into consideration as well in whatever production system you want to use. And again, the cover crops, as said earlier in our last lecture and this lecture again, yes, that's very important. Cover crops, no tillage, soil conservation is something that is going to be happening now and in future again. And what is very important if you're applying any fertilizer, yes, please take that 4R into consideration. Very popular and very common and something that you need to remember. Right rate, right time, right place, and right amount. You must know the rate. You must know the rate, and it's available for each crop. And based on the rate, you should be able to calculate the right amount. Do not add extra. Do not add more. Add at the right time. If you're planting rice, tilling is the best time. Then if you add after tilling, you are wasting your fertilizer. Okay? Right place, yes, do not add fertilizer far away. Now, broadcasting is not a good method. Placement at the point where the plant is growing, at least 5 centimeters away from the plant, is highly effective. Placement at the base of the basal placement, very effective. Side placement, very effective. So you must know the best method to use. Certainly is labor intensive. You need labor in it, but certainly it will be more highly nitrogen efficient. Okay, and I think that's all I have here. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Ajit Singh, for your amazing sharing knowledge. Now we are on discussion session. For all the participants that have questions, please feel free to ask your question by raising your hand using raise hand icon in Zoom apps, or if you joining us by YouTube, you can drop your question in YouTube chat box or in Zoom chat box. Okay, Dr. Ajit, quite interesting with your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Sharing knowledge.
Yeah,
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Related to this nitrogen and phosphorus balance curing for nitrogen and phosphorus uptake for plant. What is the most challenging challenge or problem that we face to secure nitrogen and phosphorus balance in monoculture or in annual crops in tropical region like in Indonesia or in Malaysia for the system to sustain the environment, human welfare, like you said before, and also for soil.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much, Rennie, for the interesting question. You have summarized everything in one question, you know.
Yes.
Exactly. So actually, it is very challenging, and you know that when we talk of sustainability, sustainability also includes our human welfare as well, and we need to get profit out of it. If you do not get profit, if you cannot sustain your family, then it's not sustainable. We cannot just talk about environment, and we cannot just talk about soil, but we must talk about our income as well. So you must have a system that can give you enough to feed your family. And it's quite challenging based on the dominant culture that we have, monocropping. You know, that's quite dominant currently. It has been quite dominant, especially the plantations and some other large companies. At least the farmers do practice some kind of sustainability. They are into that, and the bigger companies do have that situation. And if you take N into consideration, you can see that based on the slides, and a lot of N is being lost. And I can see that people apply more than what is being required. And this is something where the IoT comes in. You know, we need to have a software where the farmer will be able to know this is my area, and this is the nutrient content in the soil. So based on the nutrient content, this is what I should apply. Okay, if I'm applying this much of Mokuna and this much of manure, then how much am I adding to it? How much nutrient will it add to the fertilizer, to the soil? And if I'm applying this for the fertilizer, then this inorganic fertilizer, then how much is it? It has cost associated to it. Then how can I apply more effectively, efficiently? So some of these things must be available electronically so that our farmers can have access to it, and they'll be able to practice agriculture more electronically, efficiently, and effectively. And again, I will say the challenge is the losses that we have. A lot of losses because rainfall is very high, and we have a lot of water flowing, very high rate of flow of water. Runoff is very high, and we can do that by cover cropping, by managing the conserving soil using conservation techniques. So that's it. You know, the fertilizer that we add, how do we make sure that the plants get it? That's the challenge. And there are lots of varieties coming up. Scientists are working in getting varieties that are highly efficient, but I would say efficient not only in terms of drying all the nutrients, but efficient in terms of nitrogen use efficiency, phosphorus use efficiency. And use efficiency is how much how much dry matter, how much yield do we get per unit of N that we have applied. That's the efficiency. So if you're able to get more yield per unit of N and P that we apply, that's an efficient plant. So we need to develop those plants that are able to take up these nutrients efficiently. And that's the reason why I told you earlier, we are working on rooting system. We are trying to breed local varieties of crops, wheat and maize. We're trying to get the local old wild varieties to breed with the current ones so that we'll be able to develop a more aggressive root system that can take up more nutrients from the soil. something. Yeah, I hope you will be able to answer some of your questions. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ajit Singh, for the committee. If you have collect your question from all the audience from YouTube and Zoom, could you please share the question? Okay, Dr. Ajit, we have question from Andini Pradita.
Yeah.
She or he in the first semester of basic soil science.
Okay.
The question is the use of underutilized crop to increase nitrogen in the soil, such as Bambara groundnut, is very interesting because it could be integrated with cereal-based crop. Is there any underutilized crop that might have the same potential?
Yeah, we have. I don't know. There's a crop. I mean, there are so many crops that are underutilized. When we say underutilized, you might have legumes that you rely on in your area, but in other area it might be underutilized. Okay, like Bambara is heavily utilized in Africa, but here is underutilized. So you might have some local legumes in your area. Now let's say, for example, lab. You know lab, Dolichos lab. It's a bean. Does anyone know that? Yes.
Oh.
Dolichos lab is a big broad bean, and we use it as a vegetable as well. You see it in the market as a vegetable. And unfortunately, I did have a picture of it. I will have to search, but it's a bean that can be grown. It's an underutilized crop, and it doesn't require much moisture. Dolichos lab bean is a cover crop too. It's a cover crop, and it can even survive very low moisture as low as 300 to 500 millimeter. So that could be another underutilized crop, and that could be grown as well. And it fixes nitrogen and add nutrients to the soil, and that could be one. Yes, mucuna grows very wild, and mucuna seeds, unfortunately, is a cover crop and very popular in plantations. But unfortunately, the seeds are not consumed. It can be consumed, but it needs to be processed before it can be consumed. So I will not advise you, if you are a farmer, to grow mucuna, or it becomes a problem, unless you manage it. You grow mucuna and incorporate it into the soil. You grow it and use it as a mulch. But if you growing in your kitchen garden, certainly that can be, it grows very fast, and it can be a nuisance at times, you know. But the companies they are growing it a lot, and they have laborers to able to incorporate it into soil or use it as a mulch. But one example is Dolichos lab. Yeah, lab bean, high protein content. You can eat it as a vegetable. You can eat it as boil it and eat it as a pulse. Yeah. And you might have another underutilized crop in your area is for you to identify and see how you can incorporate it into the system. As a researcher, you should be looking around and see how you can make use of these resources and these problems. Try to identify a problem in your area and see how you can solve that at level, because that's what you're doing. That's our objective, to solve the given problem. Yeah. So look for those underutilized legumes in your area, see how you can use it.
Okay, and I hope the response quite answer your question. We need to look more for underutilized or underrecognized.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Local biodiversity that can do the same as lab.
Lab, yeah. LAB, yes. LAB, lab. The scientific name is, yeah.
And I have another question, Dr.
Yes,
because quite interesting with this kind of topic. As your explanation in your presentation, there was hidden hunger that are quite difficult to diagnose. So how to diagnose that hidden hunger? Like we diagnose macronutrients deficiency, for example, like phosphorus deficiency in maize that we can see with naked eye, like the leaf color turn to purple. We can do that with this hidden hunger.
Yeah, That's the why the name hidden, you know. That's a good question, Rene. That's why it's called hidden, you know. And it's quite common in human beings as well. So we have quite a number of children in everywhere, not only in Africa or Asia, even in developed countries as well. They are malnourished, they are nutrition deficient, but they don't show the symptoms. They look very healthy, very good, but they are undergoing that deficiency symptoms. That's why it's called hidden hunger. It cannot be diagnosed. We cannot know it. It's called hidden hunger. Same thing with plants. So we don't know the plants are undergoing that particular stage, and we don't know it. We cannot diagnose it. No way we can diagnose it. And the only way we can do that is to make sure that the nutrients are available in time. Nutrients are available all the time. It's just like our babies, you know, we make sure that our babies get all the nutrients all the time, so that hidden hunger does not occur. Similarly, the plants, you should make sure that the plants get those nutrients all the time. And we should be able to identify critical growth stages of all the crops. Rice has its critical growth stages like tillering, panicle initiation, and flowering and grain filling. These are all critical growth stages, and we must make sure that it's available. Nutrients are available at those critical growth stages. So each crop has those critical growth stages. Make sure that the crops are available. Okay, and one way we can solve this is applying the coated fertilizer. Enough of organic matter. When there will be organic matter, it acts as a slow release nutrients. So nutrients will be available all the time. Slow release fertilizer releases nutrients slowly. So at any particular time, there will be no deficiency. Slow release fertilizer. So that could be one of the solutions. It's difficult. It's not, you can identify the deficiency symptoms, but not the hidden hunger. Yeah. The deficiency symptoms, if there is deficiency of nitrogen, the plants will start showing yellowing of leaves. Okay. Purple coloration for phosphorus. You know it if there is deficiency. But that hidden hunger is at the corner, you know, at the tip, at the corner. You will not know it. And the plants will be at that particular stage, the plants will be hungry and they will not show. And it can have serious effect on the yield of the crop.
Thank you, sir. For the committee, we have 3 minutes more if you already collect a question from YouTube or chat box of Zoom, please. Yes, sir. We have a question from Dika Mustafa. She already on the first semester of basic soil science, and the question: control release fertilizer is new thing for me. What kind of coating that can be used to control fertilizer release?
Okay.
Coating.
Yeah, I mean, this is something you can do it as an engineer. I mean, but I do have collaboration with my engineer colleagues, and they do coat. There are a lot of chemicals that are starch. There are some starch and mixed with some other chemicals that are harmless anyway. They don't pollute. There are a lot of people are trying a lot of things that they can probably coat on the surface so that it dissolves in water slowly, and it has a slow dissolving. Not that if you add in the soil and dissolves very fast. So its attribute, the characteristics would be such that it dissolves very slowly in water, so that the nutrients will be released very slowly. And some of these chemicals, they are very porous. It all depends on the nature. Some of these coatings are porous. So some of the companies that are into this production, high-tech production, they are able to coat it with very high-tech coating that makes it porous. You know, it is a kind of membrane. So it releases nutrients very slowly. That's one way. So when all the nutrients are gone, then if you crush it, you see as is an empty ball. So it depends on the technology. And these are the coatings. I can't know what the coatings are. I don't know it. But I know my colleagues in engineering, they do test it. They're trying that. And they do mix a lot of things like starch and some other things. They're able to mix that so that it doesn't harm the soil microorganisms. Yeah, it is future. I mean, it is among the smart agricultural techniques FAO, smart agricultural techniques, and the slow release of fertilizers. Yes, and it's a bit expensive currently. It's almost, if, for example, like 1 kg of ordinary fertilizer will cost you, let's say $1, and the coating will cost you $6 or $7 per kg. It's expensive currently, but probably with time it will be cheaper. And it is the best because the losses are very minimal and leaching are minimal as well. So unfortunately, I do not exactly know the coatings they use because some of these materials are it's patented, so the company may not tell you what they have used. But I know it's something related to starch, or it can be something synthetic. But it is, they don't disclose, the companies don't disclose anyway.
Thank you, Dr. Ajit. We apologize for the audience that we couldn't present all the questions because we have a time limitation.
Yes,
if you have further questions, you can send email directly to Dr. Ajit Singh to have further discussion.
Yes, please. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. And it has been a pleasure talking to you all, sharing my experience, and hopefully we'll meet in future. And through collaboration, yeah, I know I have students from Indonesia that are studying here, that have graduated. They did well, excellent. Excellent material. They did very well here in Malaysia and Nottingham. Yes, thank you very much. Yes. Thanks a lot for standing.
And before we close today's guest lecture, we will have closing speech from the head of Soil Science Department, Dr. Syahrul Kurniawan. Hello, Dr. Syahrul Kurniawan.
Hello, Reni.
Hello,
Dr. Ajit.
Yes,
nice to meet you. Fine, thanks.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my experience. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we also thank you for your valuable time for sharing.
It's always a two-way process, knowledge transfer from one institute to the other. Yes, hopefully we'll make more of this in future.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Saro. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you also. Okay, good morning, student and also lecturer from Soil Science Department, Faculty of Agriculture, University of Brawijaya. Also, good morning to Dr. Ajit Singh. We are gratitude to thanks very much to Dr. Ajit Singh for sharing your experience, knowledge, and research to all our students here and related with the application of soil management, on to crop and also to soil fertility. And on behalf of the Dean of Faculty of Agriculture, we say to thanks to all the sharing, and we hope we can do it. We can do a collaboration in the next, in the future, both in the research or in the teaching, and also collaboration in the publication. Hopefully, we can do in the future. Okay. And also, I would like to thanks to all organizing committee, Kristanti, also Reni, and others who preparing the 3-in-1 program. So in goods, very good, and also all audience. I thanks for the student of fundamental of soil science course that's already has joined for the meeting today, and also there's also the student from Vietnam join in this course, Dr. Ajit Singh.
Yes, that's great.
Yes, because we have a collaboration program with UF, Vietnam in 3-in-1 and also in 2-in-1 program. So I think that's all for me, and I thank you very much for all, and nice to see you, Dr. Ajit Singh.
Yes,
hopefully we can see in the future. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Syahrul Kurniawan, for the closing statement. And now we are at the end of this lecture. Before we close all this lecture, we would like to ask you, Dr. Ajit Singh, because we have to write for report of this program. We would like to ask you for take a picture together in this Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
Please, all the audience, open the camera, and please committee be ready to take off our picture. Maybe I will count 2, 3.
Okay.
Wait, I still can't see students here. It's only 4 students that I see in the Zoom.
Students are a bit shy, you know. Try to open their cameras.
So please, students, you can open your camera.
We have the same problem here as well. Students hardly, they don't want to put on their webcam.
Are we ready, Bu Tanti?
Okay, please, Reni.
Okay. Committee, please be ready. 1, 2, 3. Maybe one more time. 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you, Dr. Ajit Singh. As you said, and Dr. Shahrul Kurniawan said, we hope that in the future we will meet again in better occasion, and we will have collaboration, whether in research or publication.
Yeah.
And for the conclusion of today's lecture,
thanks a lot.
Securing nitrogen and phosphorus balance for plant uptake in tropical region, we need to do more research. We need to look for more local biodiversity to sustain not only for soil, but for the environment and human welfare. Thank you for all the audience, Soil Science Department lecturer that joined us today, and all the participants. Thank you very much for joining us.